6 p.m. on a Thursday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let's begin with the headlines. In accordance with South Korea's strong actions against the North closing the joint industrial complex of Kaesong, workers of both sides begin clearing their desks with mixed feelings. Pyongyang responds aggressively, announcing it is closing the park, expelling all South Koreans, and freezing all assets of South Korean firms there. The search is complete. Seoul's military retrieves what's believed to be debris from North Korea's long-range missile, 3 pieces, possibly from the missile's engine nozzle. Analysts keep a watchful eye on how the market reacts as major global stock markets have lost ground recently, followed by the double inter-Korean headliner, the North's missile launch and the South's shutdown of the Kaesong factory complex. We begin with the rapidly developing situations at the Kaesong Industrial Park. In an abrupt move, North Korea has declared it is expelling all South Korean workers from that joint park and is freezing all the assets of South Korean companies that are operating there. South Koreans had already begun the process of withdrawing and packing their bags from the joint industrial park earlier today. We now connect to our Connie Kim, standing by at the Inter-Korean Transit Office in Paju for more.
Well, Daniel, the announcement came about an hour ago from North Korea's Korean Central News Agency. Now, Pyongyang has announced it has closed down the complex and designated as a military control zone. Now, it says it'll freeze all assets and equipment held by the South Korean companies operating in the complex. Remember, today was the first day South Korean factory owners began heading to the complex to start the process of withdrawing from the complex. With North Korea's abrupt announcement, inter-Korean ties are expected to go through turbulence. The general consensus here among reporters is that this is a much more serious situation than in 2013 when there was a 5-month shutdown.
Right, this time we were taking a page from North Korea's playbook, hoping that it'll work. Sometimes stronger action seems to work against North Korea instead of just trying to peacefully talk things out. The South Korean the businessmen who are running the operations there, as well as the North Koreans who punch in to work at the industrial complexes, must have been a very abrupt, last-minute arrangement for them. Did you notice anything unusual on the North Korean side earlier today?
Well, Daniel, it seems like North Korea has told its workers not to report to duty on Thursday. Reportedly, some 280 buses arrived at the complex as usual, but they appeared empty. A total of 132 South Koreans entered the complex today. Most of the factory and company owners returning from Kaesong remained tight-lipped and were reluctant to comment about the shutdown.
South Koreans with factories at the complex are trying their best, but what we got is a sudden notice to pull out. What did we do wrong? The country would be better off if the companies were allowed to prosper.
We respect the government's orders and have no choice but to leave Kaesong Industrial District Management Committee.
The South Korean government had been reviewing plans for supporting the companies, but that plan for now seems like it'll have to change significantly, as it now appears the complex won't be restarting anytime soon. Reporting live from the Inter-Korean Transit Office, I am Connie Kim.
Well, thank you for being out there for us, Connie, and for those updates. Now, there's rapidly changing situations in the complex of the once peaceful mode in the last remaining hope or symbol of reunification for South Koreans, and a link of economic ties between North and South Korea is, of course, in serious jeopardy. There's a situation right now with military tensions constantly being escalated, with South Korea's military also preparing to boost readiness just in case, with North Korea constantly coming up with more aggressive actions, coming up with time limits, sort of cornering South Koreans to really rush and get out of there. It seems North Korea is responding in a rather the usual North Korean way, that is, responding with aggressiveness, saying, you can't quit on us, we are going to quit on you, seems to be the attitude from North Korea. Moving on to other stories related with the situations there. In addition to the suspension of the Kaesong Industrial Complex, South Korea is moving forward with its efforts to drum up support for strong sanctions on North Korea still. To that end, Seoul's foreign minister met with UN Security Council members, some of whom have already announced independent sanctions on the reclusive state. Our foreign affairs correspondent, Kwon So-wa, has this report.
The international sanctions to be imposed on North Korea need to be at a level that far exceeds the regime's imagination. This is what South Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se told reporters in New York on Wednesday after meeting with all 15 UN Security Council members during his two-day trip to the UN headquarters.
We expect a strong and effective action towards sanctions. To summarize what I told the council members, this time we need a terminating resolution.
Minister Yoon said the vicious cycle of provocations and resolutions will continue if the sanctions are too weak. In a meeting with UN Security Council representatives from the US, China, Japan, and Russia, he emphasized that South Korea made a critical decision by suspending the Kaesong Industrial Complex. This reference was seen as a bid to change China and Russia's lukewarm attitude towards strong sanctions against Pyongyang. During his stay, Yoon also emphasized the need for individual countries to impose their own independent sanctions, something the U.S. is actively pursuing, as the Senate unanimously passed the toughest sanctions ever on North Korea Wednesday, aimed at derailing the regime's drive for ever more advanced nuclear weapons.
The legislation before us today represents the tough response that is necessary to send this message directly to North Korean leaders: disarm or face severe economic sanctions.
Japan has announced new sanctions as well, including a ban on North Korean ships entering Japanese ports and restrictions on people taking cash in excess of $900 to North Korea. A senior official at Seoul's foreign ministry says more countries are sharing the view that the point has been reached where cash flow into the north has to be hindered to cripple the regime's nuclear and missile programs. Kwon So-wa, Arirang News.
And of course, North Korea's very over-the-top aggressive reaction was expected by the South Korean government, and they're taking actions to be very well prepared for more developments from North Korea. Meanwhile, the South Korean Navy has recovered debris from the North Korean missile that was launched on Sunday. It was a long-range missile, believed to be a long-range missile. 3 pieces were found on the ocean floor about 100 kilometers from Ochang Island in the West Sea. The Navy has been working around the clock since Tuesday to recover the items using salvage ships and unmanned remotely operated vehicles. The pieces are believed to be from the missile engine nozzle. Other pieces from the first and second stages of the long-range missile were recovered on Monday, as well as fragments of the payload fairing that were picked up on the launch day. They will now be sent to the Agency for Defense Development for analysis. Meanwhile, over at the South Korean National Assembly, the reaction to the government's decision regarding the inter-Korean Kaesong Industrial Complex seems to be mixed among main rival parties. Kim Young-gil fills us in.
The ruling Saenuri Party said Thursday that it respects the government's decision to close the inter-Korean Kaesong Industrial Complex, adding that North Korea had brought the current situation on itself.
This was an inevitable measure, as we've constantly warned North Korea to end its vicious cycle of provocations. Responsibility for the closure of the joint industrial complex lies with the Kim Jong-un regime.
The ruling party also says strong sanctions are the only way to make the North give up its nuclear ambitions and long-range missiles. Taking the other side, the main opposition Minju Party of Korea said it is against the decision and urged the government to reconsider.
Our party is against the suspension of operations at the Kaesong Industrial Complex. People who work there have been saying the complex was a miraculous place that had the potential to expedite Korean reunification. Closing the complex will derail our achievements.
The party is also concerned that such measures will eventually lead to the complex's permanent closure. The minor opposition People's Party is also against the shutdown, which is said akin to the country choosing to self-sanction itself, because it won't have any effect on North Korea and will only hurt the South Korean companies with factories in the complex. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories, the provisional session kicked off at the National Assembly this Thursday. Lawmakers are expected to try and reach a compromise over a number of contentious bills to end the current legislative paralysis. Shin Se-min brings us the latest.
The National Assembly kicked off a provisional session on Thursday, and lawmakers are seeking to make progress on a number of contentious bills that await approval. They've reached a somewhat silent consensus on the need to pass the bills, but what they're hoping for is a breakthrough before the next regular session starts on February 19th.
With the passage of the Corporate Revitalization Plan, known as the One-Shot Act, what's left are the labor reform bills and bills on improving the service sector, among others. And we will put extra effort into getting those bills passed.
The basic structure for a compromise is out, meaning that we and the Central Party are inching closer to reaching a conclusion if the ruling party agrees to embrace our proposals.
Up until now, little to no progress has been made on bills related to labor reform, counterterrorism measures, the service sector, and redrawing Korea's electoral map. But with a general election scheduled for April 13th and some lawmakers already worrying over potential postponement, lawmakers are running out of time. If the rival parties fail to conclude talks on the matter by Friday, the National Assembly Speaker Chung Ih-hwa will put his electoral proposal for a floor vote next Thursday at regular session as previously announced. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
With lingering uncertainties at home and abroad, South Korean shares were in for a hit on the first day of trading after the long holiday weekend. While officials say North Korea's latest provocation is unlikely to have much of an impact on the local market, external risks could. Kim Min-ji takes a closer look.
The South Korean market was no exception to the global market downturn, feeling the impact of a series of internal and external risks that emerged over the extended holiday period. On the domestic front, North Korea launched a long-range missile on Sunday, and in response, South Korea suspended all operations at the inter-Korean Kaesong Industrial Complex, a major source of income for the communist state. While the general consensus is that the North's latest provocation had a limited impact on the local financial market, the poor health of the global economy is dealing it a significant blow. In Seoul, the benchmark Kospi closed sharply lower, shedding almost 3% on the first day of trading following the Lunar New Year holiday. Meanwhile, the Korean won closed at 1,202 won against the US dollar, weakening by roughly 0.3%.
The local bourse hasn't been able to avoid the global market volatility seen during the holiday break. There's growing negative sentiment against global stimulus policies, for example, Japan's minus interest rates, as they haven't been able to prop up the economy.
Major stock markets around the world, especially Japan, have recently lost ground. The benchmark Nikkei lost over 7% over 2 days. On Thursday, Hong Kong's Hang Seng, which reopened after the holiday break, also shed more than 4% at one point. South Korea's finance ministry said it's keeping a close eye on local and global markets and vowed to convene a market review meeting every day until conditions show signs of stabilization. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen has signaled that the Fed might delay but not abandon planned interest rate increases due to the ongoing risks facing the U.S. economy. For details, let's turn to Park Jong-hong.
Further rate hikes in the United States may be put on the back burner due to global uncertainties. Giving testimony before Congress, Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen said a variety of risks could pose a threat to U.S. growth and throw the economy off track.
Persistent weakness abroad exacerbated concerns about the outlook for global growth. These growth concerns, along with strong supply conditions and high inventories, contributed to the recent fall in the prices of oil and other commodities.
As for the major risk, Yellen singled out the uncertainty over China, saying it's weighing on the U.S. economy by rattling business sectors and has the potential to drag down other countries as well.
Should any of these downside risks materialize, foreign activity and demand for U.S. exports could weaken and financial market conditions could tighten further.
Despite the concerns, Yellen said the U.S. will likely stay on a path of moderate growth that will allow the Fed to push ahead with gradual adjustments to its monetary policy. But she stressed there was no preset course. Yellen added that the labor market should continue to improve and inflation will eventually rise toward the Fed's target. In December last year, the Fed raised the benchmark interest rate by 25 basis points, the first rate hike since a global financial crisis and recession in 2007. Park Jong-hong, Arirang News.
South Korea is the world's most research-intensive economy, according to figures released by the OECD. In 2014, Korea invested just under 4.3% of its gross domestic product in R&D, ranking first out of the 34 OECD member countries and 7 developing nations. This is over a twofold increase from 2.2% posted in 1995, with the rise attributed to greater industrial investment. Israel ranked second, followed by Japan. The members' average remained unchanged from 2013 at 2.37%, while South Korea ranked first in the proportion of its GDP devoted to research. The nation's R&D spending of $72.3 billion was one-fifth that of China's. And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Do tune in for more updates at 10 p.m. Korea time. For now, thank you for watching.